Good morning and welcome to the fourth leadership seminar organized by ESHA. As you may already know, we are organizing this series of webinars because we are trying to improve our communication to the broad community of school leaders. And due to the cancellation of our biennial conference and also the current situation, we cannot really meet in person. So we are organizing this seminar or these seminars online. Today we have a very hot topic, inclusion, and we're going to approach inclusion through a project that ESHA has participated in for the last 3 years. We're actually coming to the end of this project. In Europe and also around the world, there have been various attempts to develop different inclusion strategies, usually with a certain target group in mind, or a certain school level in mind. The specialty of Multinclude is that we are not focusing on any school level or any specific inclusion need, but we are trying to look at the inclusion needs of students to have a kind of feeling of belonging. And it doesn't matter where these inclusion practices or strategies are implemented. The overall aim that we would like to have is completion of secondary education and a continuation of studies at tertiary level, not necessarily university, but any kind of tertiary education. So basically, we are aiming at educating lifelong learners, and we are trying to support schools in catering for the individual inclusion needs of each and every student. This webinar is trying to highlight some of the project outcomes, especially because some of the participants are already familiar with the project as such. And we're also going to highlight some of the practices that we have identified during the project. What we're going to introduce you today is a self-assessment tool that has been piloted in over 60 schools in various European countries, and also an online course that was developed in the project, which is aiming at school leaders and also teachers who wish to broaden their inclusion horizon. When we started the project, we first identified inclusion practices that we found good. And although I personally hate this notion of good practice or best practice, we still are talking about good practices because when we identify these practices, we also try to find the good in these good practices for inspiration. Each partner in the project identified one highlighted case, and in the case of ESHA, it was a very interesting inclusion project, primarily implemented in Hungary, called No Bad Kid, that is targeting children who are just bad, according to teachers, and who has kind of annoying behavior. And this project is trying to offer a complex solution to the schools, to the teachers, and also to the families. For each highlighted case, we created a video, and we are first going to show you part of this video that we made about No Bad Kid. Probably it's worth mentioning that this video was done by secondary school students from the Netherlands. Or they were told that this is this kind of a project, and we are interested in the inclusion elements of this example. They produced the video. Two 16 and 15-year-old boys went to Hungary to do the footage in Budapest and Kecskemét. And basically their first cut was accepted. So apart from the interesting points that you will see in this very short video, also bear in mind that this is how secondary students see other people's wonderful work in the field. Lutza, can you start the video, please?
The school works with a special program in which they implement inclusion in the No Bad Kid project. Monica Rosa explained how this works on the school.
Here on the back, you can see all the individual goals of each child who is in the classroom. So you can see the name of the child, the individual goal, and also they have an individual contract which is signed by the child, the headmaster, and also the parent of the child. The children will be more successful if all the partners are supporting them in this journey of learning new skills, new social skills. They also have a group goal, that this is here, and also have a group name. This group has the name of Olaf. The children were choosing this name together with the headmaster. And the motivation is back here. So each week they can see how much they earned last week and how much money do they have to go to the store and buy the things that they want.
So, the school works with a system in which the students get a reward for reaching their goals, and the students can use the fictional money to buy toys and other things they want. One of the teachers told us more about the things the students can buy.
Every week on Thursday, the children come to shop. How it works is that we schedule the classes. During every hour, 2 classes come to shop. The children buy 2 things at the shop. What we experience is that very often they do not shop for themselves, but for their siblings, parents, family members. And actually it happened quite often that they shopped for a pedagogue or a friend at the class. The children come up in pairs from the classroom and they shop, partially as they wish, partially there is a mandatory rule that we introduced. If an exercise book, textbook, pen, pencil, eraser or sharpener is missing, they are obliged to buy it at the shop.
The school supports positive behavior and rewards this. The school has just started the system in September. But how do the students experience it? And do they see any improvement since they've started this program?
Well, actually it helps. It motivates children to there shouldn't be that much trouble. Because, well, there were a lot of fights and, well, it motivates the children to be good. And whoever gets the points can buy a t-shirt and, for example, go to the Dobro shop and buy whatever if he collects the points. And actually it motivates them to be good more often, not to cause trouble. And now, well, the school starts to get better now that this Dobro came. Well, this Dobro program is that, well, for example, everybody has individual goals. For example, mine is that I only speak with permission, and if we meet it, we get 10 points on each class, 10 Dobra, 10 points, and it slowly aggregates, and if we do something, the teacher defines how much reward he gives to us, and it adds up, and we always write it on the board that who has how many points. And on Thursday, we have the shopping day. Everybody goes up and looks for something he fancies. Well, sometimes it does not work out because we do not ask for permission to speak, we do not put our hands up and we interrupt. We still have to practice it. Well, the children are more hardworking, and in the discussion circles they can tell about their complaints, and if, for example, the teacher can help. For example, last year when there were no discussion circles yet, he could not tell it, but here he can.
So, the students experience it in a very positive way. But does the program also show improvements in data like absences? And why did the school opt for the No Bad Kid project? We asked the head of the school.
We have 124 students at the school currently, out of that more than...
Thank you. Instead of listening to the school head, it was a very long part, but of course you can watch the whole video. It is shared on the Multinclude website. I'm going to ask Andrea Gruber, who is the leader of this program at Presley Ridge Hungary Foundation, to complement what we have seen in the video. Gruby, unmute yourself and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming to this webinar this morning. I'm really excited because when Esther approached us almost 2 years ago now about making this short film about our work in the school, we all got really excited. And when we saw the results, we were even more excited because I think the two guys from the Netherlands, the young guys who made this short film, really captured the essence of what we do. And basically what you have seen in this short snippet is a description of a behavior management system, as we call it. And we basically use this system of methodologies to help the kids to achieve behaviors that doesn't cause trouble in their environment. So they become more likable for the people who are around them. And it didn't, the video doesn't show very well how these kids, how should I say, how appalling the behavior of these kids used to be. They are aggressive, they threaten, they swear, they hit each other, the teacher sometimes, or just the objects around them. And that's where we start them. So we basically start working with these kids, meet them where they are at, and see what causes their problems. Because their problems, the problems they cause are not the causes of their problems. So we try to find what trauma they carry, which makes them behave in this way. And basically the approach that we are using is called the neurosequential model. It basically states, and I'm going to be very simplistic about it, that these behavioral issues that we detect in kids at the school age usually are symptoms of some form of earlier trauma. And this trauma means not only traumatic events like death of a loved one or an accident or serious illness, but also sustained deprivation. So living in extreme poverty also has similar effects on the developing brain as a bigger traumatic event, for example, a car accident. And these are the roots of these issues that we see in the school at the school age manifesting in disturbing behaviors. So we basically developed this or adapted this system that again helps these kids to learn how to manage their behavior, so it doesn't cause doesn't cause problems in their environment, in their immediate living environment, and the communities in which they have to exist. And this also helps them or makes them more likable for these people. Because honestly, if a kid comes at you and threatens you or tries to hit you, it's really frightening. It makes you feel helpless, even if you are a teacher. And so you instinctively reject the kid. And that's the worst thing that we can do with these kids, the rejection, because the more rejection they get, the worse their symptoms will become. And I think I'm going to stop here. But before I do, I just like to mention three things that in the bigger picture that this system does for these kids. We say that we instill hope in these kids. So when everyone rejects them on a daily basis, we actually show them that it is possible to lead a different life. The other thing is that we, in the work that we do with them, we teach them those basic skills that they need to be able to exist in any kind of group. And thirdly, we teach them or help them learn those skills that become indispensable in the workplace later on in their lives. And just a short story from yesterday, we had our online Christmas gathering or holiday gathering, and we had one of our former kids participated in this gathering, and he announced to the group of our professionals that he's going to start working, or he started working yesterday as a childcare professional in one of the children's homes in Budapest. He got a job, and the person who had, and he mentioned that when he joined the call, he noticed one of our colleagues who was his group leader when he first came into the group, and the beauty of the story is that this group leader actually worked in the same children's home before she joined Presley Ridge Hungary. And so it's like a circle, that this kid who she helped a lot to grow into his basically his full potential, is now working in the same children's home as she used to. So I think I will stop here, and I'm sure we'll still have some more time to discuss these later on.
Thank you very much, Ruby. It was a really nice story showing how successful you are. And I also think that this example is even more timely now, because although you are working with very disadvantaged children, at the moment, there are more traumatized children in the world than before. So I think also schools and school leaders who are experiencing strange behavior in children coming back to school, they can utilize what you have developed, because this kind of trauma-informed approach could come very handy after the COVID traumas of children for various reasons. So this is how our path started, by identifying and analyzing different practices. And one of the outcomes that have been used very widely and also very successfully piloted in Hungary, although it was not intended originally, was the inclusion metrics that help schools to understand how far they are with their own inclusion practices, and to identify areas where they could improve, and also identify areas that might not be relevant for them. I would like to invite Christian Gari from the Children's University of Vienna, who was in charge of developing the inclusion matrix. Please, Chris, briefly present the matrix to our audience. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Esther, for introducing me. Let's see if what I'm going to present you during the next minutes might be a response to situations like Andrea has just outlined, when it comes to be as inclusive as possible as a school or as an educational establishment. I have prepared a couple of slides which I will share with you in a minute. However, I'm not alone today. I have Caroline with me, who has been working on the Multinclude project as well, and who is our executive director in Vienna University Children's Office. If I may share my screen. So, as Esther has announced, I will talk a little bit about what we have developed within the Multinclude project as the inclusion matrix. I will briefly talk you through. When I mentioned Caroline and me as representing the Vienna University Children's Office, I would just like to quickly let you know who we are actually. We are not representing the former school sector. We are an academic spin-off company owned by the University of Vienna. We are a non-profit organization that was formally established almost 15 years ago, after having been working on project basis within the university management of the University of Vienna, but we were then sort of outsourced as an independent company, still under the control of the University of Vienna. We are working with approximately 50 staff and representing a wide bunch of scientific background and knowledge, ranging from education science, sociology, psychology, political science, communication and media science, etc. So this is sort of representing the whole diversity of projects which we are engaged in, of which Multinclude is one. However, we have like 4 major focus areas of activities, which has been from the very beginning: caretaking services for university staff, STEM engagement and science communication, supporting universities in their 3rd mission, promoting media literacy, and supporting democracy and civic education, for example, for the Austrian Parliament. So as an organization, we are linked with the academic, but we're also engaged in schools and have been engaged in schools since the very beginning. When it comes to presenting the online matrix, I have prepared a little kind of a teaser video, which I would like to share with you, and I'll start right now. So in a nutshell, that is what the Multinclude inclusion matrix is about. Sorry for the typos in the video. I just crashed the video program yesterday when I tried to correct them. So what is the Multinclude matrix then? Esther has, in her introduction, briefly mentioned that the inclusion matrix is intended as a tool for supporting educational establishments in initiatives, and this not only means schools but also other knowledge providers and educational establishments from the non-formal sector in developing and implementing different approaches, or working on their mission, or starting to develop their strategies when it comes to enhancing diversity and inclusion, or reacting to diversity and promoting inclusion in their organizations and in their activities. Yeah? So this means that this is primarily intended as an instrument for raising awareness, yeah, and for start to embark on say on an journey of inclusion and diversity, but it's not so much intended as a means of evaluation of single activities, yeah, when it comes to testing their efficiency or their impact. Yeah, it's more like an awareness raising tool for organizations. It consists of 3 components practically. We have set up a bundle of online checklists, yeah, as a sort of assessment and awareness tool, which is also available on a paper-based downloadable version. And it is supported by a wide bunch of supplementary materials like manuals. We have a concept and tools for accompanying workshops. We have support tools that enable the organizations to start thinking about improving their inclusion strategy. So this is all available in the inclusion metrics toolkit on the website. How was the matrix developed? Actually, we haven't started from scratch. Multinclude has been running almost more than 2.5 years now, and we have built upon existing instruments that were available already, that were validated already, like, for example, the index of inclusion, which is mentioned here, or some of the Multinclude partners have also been involved in the CIS Catalyst project before, which is a Horizon 2020 initiative that was also looking at aspects of diversity and inclusion. So we had sort of a pick and mix approach when we were compiling the matrix, which was also cross-checked with the collection of the cases of inspiring practice, which Esther mentioned before. So we have, from the tools that were available, selected several dimensions and cross-checked them with several aspects that are also represented in the 70 cases of good practice. This goes back to the work that Frank Tuit, for example, has done. And this also fed into the compilation of the items which we have gathered in the inclusion matrix, which has been piloted in more than 30 schools meanwhile, and this also supported the further refinement of the tool, and we had like continuous iterative feedback and reflections from a board of experts and practitioners, both within the Multinclude project and from external as well. The 7 dimensions which I mentioned are the ones which are listed here. So the items of the inclusion metrics aligned along these 7 dimensions. And I also mentioned the 4 key aspects rooted in Frank Tuit's work, which are intellectual and social development, educational resources, cultural differences, and classroom environment as 4 major characteristics of inclusion areas in educational establishments and settings. This is just to provide you a sort of an impression what I mean when I say we cross-checked the dimensions and the aspects. If you take, for example, intellectual and social development, you see that these are overlapping dimensions, with, for example, social interaction, admission and access, student and participant support, or the management sector. So each of the items which we're using in the matrix has been aligned with both of the dimensions and the aspects, and so it enables to have like 2 perspectives on the same issue from the 2 sort of logics. Yeah, so how does the inclusion matrix work then? I've already mentioned we have implemented it online, and we also have it as an offline downloadable tool. All in all, we have gathered 147 items, which are arranged alongside the 7 dimensions, which I have mentioned, and also alongside the 4 aspects. These are available in 5 languages and may be used either by individual actors or as a group activity. For example, the piloting that Esther has mentioned in Hungary, as far as I know, these were arranged as a group activity, and I have heard that these were quite successful. And in order to support these, we have also developed a workshop facilitator toolkit, which helps key advocates for arranging workshops in their organizations. This is a snapshot taken from the online matrix. So this represents the 7 dimensions of the matrix, and this is how they look like in the offline paper-based version. So we have like one. Well, we have a set of, say, checklists of questionnaires, and each of them represents one of the 7 dimensions. What is that good for, right? When you have gone through the 7 dimensions, the result will provide you a snapshot of your readiness of inclusion, right? However, it is not primarily meant, as I mentioned in the beginning, as a mere assessment, yeah, or an evaluation. Yeah. It's more about reflecting on the issues, on the topics that are linked with the particular items. Yeah. And the reflection on these things is possibly more important than the actual result then it gives you. And this includes the consideration of the topics in a team. Yeah? So whenever you apply these tools as a teams, it might be more efficient and fruitful than just working as a single person. Yeah? And it definitely makes sense, and it also suggested to periodically repeat working and applying these tools, yeah, because both of them provide the opportunity to track changes. Yeah, so whenever you had an idea of, and this might include like simple steps, simple improvements, but whenever you have an idea of improving your inclusiveness or your reaction to this, you might after a while go back to these checklists and see if this also already represents a certain or makes visible a certain change in your, say, in your readiness status. Yeah. If you're using the online tool, we have like a dashboard style thing, which is currently being advanced, so more features will be implemented. And if you're using the offline tools, that gives you sort of a graphical representation, a pattern of your status of readiness. Yeah, yeah. This is actually the screenshot is a bit small, but actually this is the dashboard that comes out as a result of filling the online checklists. And this is a kind of a summary sheet that we have developed to work on in the paper-based version, which you just color in different colors depending on your response to the particular items. And as a whole picture, it then gives you sort of a pattern of your status with different colors in different areas and different numbers of fields filled in either the 7 dimensions which you have in lines or the 4 aspect areas which you have in columns. So what next? What after having used these checklists, yeah, we strongly encourage organizations and individuals to reflect the status in a teams, to possibly arrange and organize a workshop with a wider group of participants. You may, after you see your actual snapshot, get additional inspiration from the cases of good practice. Yeah. And these 70 cases, which are also on the website, we have annotated with the relevant dimensions. Yeah, so we have this list in the toolkit as well. But for example, if you see that your result shows a certain weakness, say in management or in in any of the other 7 dimensions, you might go back to one of these inspiring cases which have a focus on this dimension and see how these projects have tackled the issue. Then you might start thinking about developing a strategy, and for that purpose we have developed what we call the development poster or the development paper. That's a very simple structured template, say, that encourage you to think about the very first steps that might be taken, that might be started to be implemented in your school, in your activity, as a reaction to the outcomes of the assessment process. Then you might register in our Multinclude course, in our MOOC, which Patricia will present right after, and become part of the Multinclude learning community. And yeah, most essentially, give us feedback, let us learn from the work that we have done as well. Let us know how you made use of the tools that we have provided, and how these can be advanced, I would say. Yeah, so thanks for the feedback. I don't know, I'm looking at you, Esther. I think I'm beyond my time. My idea was to quickly click through the website. I have some links to share. So, I mean, it's more or less self-explaining anyway. So you might try this out after our webinar. The only thing that you should keep in mind is that for using the online matrix, you need to be registered in the community. So this needs to happen before, but all the other things are available freely on our website. So yeah, feel free to browse around the website and try out the many resources that are available there.
Thank you very much, Chris. Probably it's also worth mentioning that the online version of the matrix is only available in English for technical reasons.
Yes.
But since you can use your own language, if your language is among the ones that we already have, you can find the corresponding answers. So you can also have an online picture if you can use both language versions, the offline version of the German or Italian, and the online version of the English matrix. And if you share the links also in the chat, I think well, Carolina already shared the links in the chat, then people can also click on them and have a look, but not now, because now we would like to listen to the presentation of Patricia Staff from the University of Malmö, who is responsible for developing the massive online open course, targeting those school leaders and teachers who would like to not only improve the inclusion practices of their school, but also their own personal inclusion knowledge and practices. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Now you can hear me as well, I hope. Thank you very much. I will start by sharing the screen immediately to share with you a few slides talking about the MOOC. And then hopefully there will be time to just have a quick look at the course itself. But anyway, my name is Patricia Stav, and as Esther mentioned, I work at Malmö University as one of the 7 partners in the Multinclude project. Malmö University is a young university. We're just like 21 years old. We established in the very south of Sweden in Malmö, across the bridge from Copenhagen. And Malmö is a very multicultural and diverse city. So the university from the very beginning had an outspoken task to try to attract new groups into higher education. So the idea of inclusion and widening participation is sort of core of the university. And therefore it was an honor to be asked to join the project Multinclude, and also an answer to the dilemma we have at university level, because it's very hard to include people if they don't have been included before. We see the need of inclusion throughout the educational system. So this course, the MOOC, addresses that perspective of inclusion at all levels of education. And when we talk about a MOOC, it's a massive open online course. I think it might be worth mentioning what it stands for. Not yet so massive, but open, fairly open at least. It's developed by the Malmö University, the Center for Teaching and Learning, for which I'm the director. And the Center for Teaching and Learning is interesting because we do have a responsibility for professional development of the university teachers, but we also have a responsibility for the development of academic skills, academic generic skills amongst the students to prepare them to reach their full potential during the studies. The course that we're going to talk about is hosted by our learning management platform, Canvas. So it's within the University Canvas site, but you do register or sign up via the Multinclude webpage that we've already been talking about. And it's a 2-step registration. You need to bear in mind. Anyway, The aim of this course, as Esther briefly mentioned, is to assess educational practitioners in enhancing within the institution or working in a community. So the enhancement of inclusion can go on individual level, but also we recommend groups of people doing this course together because we think it's a good, good material for discussions with colleagues. We have been thinking about teachers and school leaders as our prime target group, but anyone with an interest in these questions are of course welcome. It's a fully self-paced course. You can do it whenever you want and in whatever pace you would like. It's independent of time. We estimate the numbers of working hours that you will need to invest to 3 hours per module, which would end up as 18 hours altogether. The language of instructions is English. The text can be translated using your browser to other languages, but the film materials, etc., is in English for so far. Very similar to the intentions with the matrix, I think the main gain of this MOOC is awareness, inspiration, and knowledge in that order. Right. We have a number of intended learning outcomes, and you can see them here. To better understand the impact of diversity in both informal and formal learning environments, and also to be able to actively contribute to a learning community that enhances inclusion. To be able to suggest an inclusion strategy as a starting point to improve inclusive practices, and to create, of course, a more inclusive learning environment, especially as a teacher, that you're part of yourself. So you can see, hopefully, that this is in line with the intentions with the matrix that we just discussed, and hopefully these two can support one another. The structure of this course is organized around 7 modules, and you can take them in whatever order you like. You can browse around, you can jump between them, or you can follow the suggested order as we have here, starting with a possibility to do a personal self-assessment before you start. So with that starting point, you can then dive into the module on bridging gaps between different levels and different groups, learning social skills and learning environments, learning a language, learning through a holistic approach. These 4 modules are based on the outcome of the analysis of those 7 cases that Esther mentioned. That lies as a foundation for the Multinclude project. There's also been a more theoretical analysis of it, and it's a report produced, and the outcome in that report is what sort of shaped these 4 first modules. And then we have added on quite recently a 5th one, inclusive learning in a digital space, and you understand why, because we all moved into the digital space with the learning experiences, and we thought it would be valuable to have that perspective added to the course as well. We then turn back to the recommendations from the Multinclude project and the analysis, and we have also offered as more of a resource some theories on learning and learning environments for those who want to go deeper into understanding what's behind all these practices that we share. For the moment, the course, as I mentioned, is self-paced. You can earn a badge, an electronic badge. We have had an opportunity to also send in an assessment and to get a certificate. Right now, that's no such possibility, but hopefully we will be able to open that up again. And for those who want to do the assessment, the 7th module on theories will be optional as well. And if we look into each and every module, the structure is more or less the same. There's an introduction to the module. There's a section of input. It could be the cases, but also other resources, and in different formats. It could be text, videos, podcasts, etc. And then the next step would be reflections and activities. we advise the participants to have a reflective journal to sort of document their learning and deepened understanding throughout the course. But it could also be quizzes or other materials as activities. And in some of the modules, we also recommend further reading for those who want to go deeper into the area. So each and every module, one way or another, would cover the activities of listening, watching, reading, and reflecting. And since the reflection is, I think, a thread through the course, I just want to demonstrate to you this reflective journal. This is totally private, nothing that you will be asked to share with anyone, just something for yourself to document your increased capacity and to go back to also, I think, is important, because hopefully something happens during the course and it could be interesting to see, how did I understand this before? There are questions within the course, both in the beginning of the module and at the end of the module, that will help you move on along this line and to document it in the reflective journal. This is more or less the description of the course. We would like to welcome you to join and to see this opportunity to actually learn from best practice, even if you don't like that so much, Esther. It's still, I think, the most valuable with this course, and what makes it unique is all the actual examples of how you can do things, how others have done, and how you can contact people if you get interested. I would like also to share with you, if I stop this one, I would like to take a few minutes to just jump into the course. I think that's time for that. Let me now see so I can find my way.
Yeah, while you're searching, I just don't like these cases to be called best practice, because
yes,
there is no better. I like to call them inspiring practice, because you look at cases that work and you are inspired by them.
That's very good. Let's call them inspiring practices instead. See if I can come to the right page. It's hard when there we are. Yeah, now you can see the first page, hopefully, Pathways to Inclusive Education. And you will meet my colleague, Adam, who will just say hello. I will let him say hello to you as well.
We cannot hear it because you were not sharing the sound of your video.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
He's just saying welcome. We'll stop him, but you can see his face anyway. He will be your guide through the course. He will introduce each module and briefly tell us what it's all about, and be your sort of partner through the course. You will find the information that I share with you on the first page, and I would like us just to have a quick look at one of the modules so that you will get a feeling for it. They're all here. First one is more supportive, to give you the best possibility start to know what's expected, to have some support around the canvas, address the reflective journal so you understand what it's for, and also connect it back to the Multinclude project. Chris mentioned the learning community, and you can reach it also from this course. That could be one entrance. And then we have the modules, and if we just have a look at the first one, Bridging Gaps, there's an introduction where you again will meet Adam. I will not try to make him talk to you, but as I mentioned, there are some questions to get you started on thinking and reflecting already from the very beginning. And then if you move further on, there is input. And in this case, the input is in form of an interview, a conversation between Adam and a professor at the University of East London. They talk about inclusion in more general ways. And there's also input in form of text, reports from different organizations, and there's also again a few reflective questions, so that we just don't throw away a text, but we also join them with some questions through the reading. We have the connection to the cases. In this case, it's the big read, one of the Multinclude cases that is highlighted and again used here. But also we have picked out a number of other cases, connected them to the 7 dimensions that Chris talked about, is the structure within the matrix. And you can browse around and you can dive into more cases than the one that we have picked up as an example. We have done this because we think it's more, maybe it's easier to have this kind of guide. What kind of case, what dimension would that address? Instead of just browsing around that web page around the 70 inspiring cases all by yourself. But that is, of course, also an opportunity. Next part would be other resources as a possibility and an offer, and then time for reflection. Again, Adam will support that. We use the reflective journal, and we have a number of questions that will pick up things from this module to reflect upon in the reflective journal. And we also have, in this case, another activity. It's a diversity check that comes on the next page. And that's it. A very, very quick example for one of the modules to give you an idea of how relatively simple it is. And you can also understand the idea of you are quite free to go around and pick and choose whatever activities you would be interested in. There's not one way of doing this. We have talked about groups of teachers doing this together, but we will also like to stress the possibility for teacher students to use this as part of their education, and we invite our student at Malmö University to also do the course and to have that as a sort of a discussion material in their learning. I think that's it. It's my 10 minutes to an end, and hopefully you got a picture at least of the MOOC, and I welcome you to join.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And I can only echo that. I would like to invite everybody, those who are present at the webinar, but also those who are watching the recording, to check out the MOOC and join us. There is always something to learn, even if you already have very, very impressive inclusion practices. As you could see, one of the modules was about inclusion and language, because probably one of the most difficult things to solve in a school is when you don't have a common language with the students or their families, or when their language levels are very different or not sufficient for really having a good communication. I came across a very interesting practice, and also the complete work of a very interesting colleague. This is not a highlighted case in the project, but this is very relevant because this has been one of the outcomes that we have to tackle language. So I would like to invite Marie Varsányi, who is an inclusion expert specializing in multilingualism in the Netherlands, to present about multilingualism and inclusion. The floor is yours, Marie.
Thank you, Esther. I'm very happy to be here, and I like how Chris phrased it, a key advocate. I think I am already a key advocate of Multinclude and of the matrix especially. And so what I would like to present to you today are simple ideas on how to tackle multilingualism in school. And I have a presentation to share. So I hope you can see it now. I would like to share with you 5 simple steps for making space for multilingualism in schools. And I would like to start first on a personal note. I was born in Hungary, and at the age of 10, I enrolled in an Austrian, Hungarian, German bilingual program. And many of the subjects in that school were only given in German. And within the context of those lessons, I felt a lot like this baby thrown into the deep water without any help. However, as you look at this baby, she looks quite happy, and I was not happy in that situation. I felt quite at a loss. I felt inconfident, and I felt I was struggling to be able to follow the curriculum. Luckily, I did not give up on learning languages, and by the age of 24, I could speak or read 6 different languages. This made me quite happy. I was feeling empowered, and I was enjoying my multilingualism. And that's until I moved to the Netherlands that year, where I felt muted in all of my languages, except maybe for English, but not even English was a language I could use in all of the contexts that I was in. I felt like my languages did not matter, and the only thing that mattered was how good my Dutch was. And I'm telling you this because this is also the experience of our multilingual students in our schools, in Europe and also outside of Europe. Multilingual students very easily are labeled as students with language deficit. And coming from that perspective of deficit, they are only looked at in terms of the target language, of the local language. And nobody's actually asking them what other languages they do speak and what they are able to do in their other languages. And this is despite the fact that we know that this is harmful for our multilingual students. Jim Cummins, the godfather of bilingual education, gave us this beautiful quote: "To reject a child's language at school is to reject the child." We know this to be the lived experience of our multilingual students, and I myself have experiences both as a child and actually even as an adult. And luckily, there are people in Europe, in the Netherlands, who are also ready to go against this idea and support multilingual students. And one of them is actually here with us today, Lennart-Jan Veldhuizen, who came up with a different school idea, with a different school concept. So Lennart-Jan wanted to create a school for students, for newly arrived immigrants especially, who a school that would give them a rich learning environment, where they could also learn in English and in Dutch, and where we could also give some attention to their other languages. Denise was born. I was lucky enough to be involved in the creation of this school from scratch. I was asked to give form to the primary part of Denise. And within this role, I wanted to focus on multilingualism and on cultural diversity. And as you see from our next slide, this was very much needed because at Denise in 2017, there were 38 home languages present. This data is only from the secondary department. If we also looked at the data coming from primary department, we would see an even higher number of languages. So these students were there in the school with all of these languages, and we wanted to see what we can do with this. So I would like to share with you 5 simple steps, 5 best practices that me and colleagues implemented at Denise to make space for multilingualism. Number 1, you can hang up welcome posters. What you see here on the right side in the picture is a colleague of ours at Denise, Pepita Franke, one of the classroom teachers. And the poster she's pointing at is a very simple welcome poster. A welcome poster is a poster where you use the word welcome, hello, or how are you, something to greet people with, and you write this down in all the languages that are present in that class or in the school. This is a very simple but powerful tool. Everybody that comes into your school and sees this poster is going to feel welcome. Not only the students and the parents, but any visitor that you get into the school. The students and the parents also feel seen and valued when they see this poster and when they create this poster. And also, if you let the parents make this poster for you, you can strengthen teacher-parent relation in the school. So this is step 1 that you can do. But you can go further. You can label items and concepts. And here are 2 ways of doing that. At the top picture, you see a very simple labeling activity. This was done by a colleague of mine And she did this on the first day of students that we had in the school. So these students arrived from different countries, different continents into the Netherlands. And on their first day of school in a Dutch school, they felt quite at a loss. They did not speak Dutch. They did not share a language with their teachers. Okay, so imagine how lost those students could feel. And then my colleague came in and she asked them to label any object that they found in any language that they could write in. After 15 minutes of doing this activity, the students relaxed. They felt immediately at home. They were able to show what they did know and what they could do. The other thing that I wanted to share here is an activity that I did with my students. That is the change poster. I did this activity at the beginning of a new unit, and change was one of the main concepts that we were going to talk about. Now, it's such an abstract idea. You want to make sure that your students understand what this word means, what the concept means. So I asked my students very simply to write down the word change in any language that they spoke. I also let them work together to make sure that they found the best translation possible in pairs or in small groups. As you can see from the decoration, the students felt very empowered by this activity and they felt ownership of this poster. If you create such a poster, you can hang this up in the classroom and it's going to also help the students remind themselves of this term during the project. So with these activities, you can help your students feel at home. You can help your students feel capable. And also in the case of the second poster, you can help students' understanding of the curriculum. Going on to step 3, it's also important to explore your students' language repertoire. And then I mean looking at each student individually. This activity is something that you might have come across already. It works with a body outline. I call it my body, my languages. So what you do here is you give a body outline to each of your students and you ask them to choose a color for each language that they speak or that they are familiar with. Next, you ask them to color in their body outline according to where their languages belong in their body. And this abstract question actually leads to beautiful personal interpretations done by the students. I have seen 6-year-olds, but also 17-year-olds carry out this activity with pride. If you do this activity, you also want to make sure that you give enough time for the students to discuss and to share their work with their peers and with you as their teacher. And while they present their work, they are going to probably be proud and happy to be able to share their identity. You can actually download this worksheet from my website, www.humanet.org, if you go to resources and portfolio. With this activity, you can help strengthen your students' identity. You can help strengthen your students' self-confidence, and you can also strengthen the student-teacher relationship. Now, so far, we've been mostly looking at ideas that can help you make your students feel at home and help them belong to the school. However, what you also want to do in terms of equity is to help the students access the curriculum. So what you can do here is send out vocabulary lists. On the right side, you see a part of the vocabulary list focusing on the topic of plants. On the left, in the left column, a colleague of mine has listed a couple of keywords connecting to that topic of plants in Dutch. Next, she sent this vocabulary list out to the parents, and the parents were asked to interact with this vocabulary with their children. They were asked to discuss the words and then translate them to the home languages and write them down. This way, the students could come prepared into the school, ready to discuss this lesson, this subject, because their previous knowledge was already activated in their home languages. This very simple activity can also support the students' understanding of the curriculum. It can also help you establish parent-teacher cooperation around the curriculum, which can go a long way. And these two aspects together can help improve the students' learning outcomes. Finally, I would also like to encourage you to let your students prepare for assignments in the language of their choice. And I know that this is not a practice that is easily done and that is frequently done in schools. So why am I suggesting you do this? If you don't do this, if you only let your students work in the target language, in the school's language, your multilingual students are not going to be able to show you what they're able to do and what they know. All that they're going to be able to show you is what they are able to show you in the school's language and what they know in the school's language. That doesn't need to be that way. So when your students are preparing for an essay, a presentation, a speech, when they are doing research, you can let them do the background work in any language. Okay, they can do the research, they can write drafts, they can practice the speech in any language they want. They still need to do the final activity in the target language. I have once seen a student that was usually really hard to motivate give an excellent speech in English this way. English was the target language. He prepared his speech in Russian. He did all the content, all the drafting, all the preparation in Russian, but he gave the speech in the end in English. And his speech was very strong content-wise, and also it was on a higher level of English than what I usually had heard from him. So clearly his preparation in Russian even helped him give a better speech in English. With these activities, students are able to show what they know and also what they're capable of doing. This helps boost the students' self-confidence, and also students' learning outcomes are improving because they're actually able to show you what they can do and what they know. So these were just 5 very simple steps, and of course there is a lot more that you can do. But I would like to finish with this thought. Making space for multilingualism in school helps students feel that they belong, which is crucial. It also gives students more equal chances at school. It strengthens parent involvement, which we know can lead to better learning outcomes. And it's absolutely simple and for free. So I think you can agree with me that there is actually no good reason not to make space for multilingualism in schools. And as I'm talking also to school heads here, I would like to leave you with a final comment. You as a school head, you need to stand behind this decision if you want to actually create a successful multilingual practice in your school. So you need to set the scene. And more importantly, you need to give your teachers the space to experiment. These ideas might be a little bit frightening for some of the teachers, as they will need to let go of control, especially in the case of the 5th activity. So you need to make sure that you are supporting your team, that they get the freedom and the space to experiment. And if you do so, you have good chances of creating successful multilingual schools. So I would like to invite you to join us on this journey towards more inclusive schools and to give space to multilingualism. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. It was a very interesting presentation, and also you presented very, very simple steps that, as you mentioned at the end, might not be that easy for many. I can speak from my personal experience that letting go of control as a teacher that you are basically trained for is really difficult. But I have tried it, and you can see whether your students are stuck and they need support or not. So I can only echo that and tell every teacher I meet not to be afraid of letting the students use their own languages as much as possible. We already have a question about language deficit in the chat. So you can read the question and probably react on that. Patricia, you had a question earlier, and probably it's also worth sharing it with the audience. It was about bridging gaps. Can you come in, Patricia?
Yes, as I understood the question, it was about the role of that sense of belonging that we have been mentioning, many of us, in different ways, and how it relates to inclusion and also the possibility of bridging gaps between, for instance, ethnical groups. And my answer is that I think that that sense of belonging is actually crucial for any kind of inclusion. I think it is a starting point. So it's very hard to get groups to connect if they don't have that sense of belonging. So we should start our work with creating that sense of belonging. And I think that the examples that you gave, Mary, was supporting this idea of the sense of belonging, and that I count as a person. I belong here is a starting step before we can ask them for anything else.
Thank you, Patricia. Mari, did you read the question?
Yes, I'm hoping I understand correctly. So you are asking about a silent phase, which means the phase when the students are not yet ready and capable of expressing themselves in the target language. Did I get that correctly? Maybe you can comment. Yes?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm assuming. So that absolutely exists, right? That is something that I think we are also all familiar with as language learners. When we are learning a language, we are not immediately able to produce that language, and that takes time. And so it's absolutely crucial to acknowledge that, to pay attention to that, and to absolutely not jump into labeling students with language deficit. Language deficit is also a big word. It doesn't actually refer to multilingual students in the first case, but it refers to anybody. It's monolingual students also that have language deficit. And so it's, yeah, being multilingual doesn't mean that you have language deficit. You need to also look at the students differently. You need to give them time and to see how they are developing compared to themselves and not compared to their monolingual peers. It can take 2 to 7 years for a bilingual student to function on the monolingual student's language level in the target language. And so we need to be aware of that. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mari. Grubi, Hungary is not really a country where inclusive education is very much promoted, but still they were able to successfully pilot, especially the inclusion metrics and support schools in creating their own inclusion strategies. And some of those schools who participated are actually schools that Pressridge works with. What is the relevance of this, well, what was presented by Chris and Patricia in a context that is not really putting inclusion as a policy priority? Are you there, Grubi?
Yes, and it's a tough question, and my mind is racing in all directions of how to tackle this question. But I think it all comes back to the idea of belonging that Patricia described, and I think that's the starting point, that we have to create spaces for all students, that they can feel at home, that they have the sense of belonging, and then we can start building on, or building the next level of skills in them, or work with them to build those skills in themselves. And I think what really is frightening in the Hungarian situation at the moment, that inclusion is not so much promoted because, and I really don't want to get into the analyzing the political situation, but that's one thing that we cannot not take into consideration, that the whole system is set up to take away the freedom and the self-motivation of people. And this is really horrifying, the level of that among teachers right now. And if they feel unvalued and threatened and insecure in their existence, then it's really hard to create that atmosphere and to create that environment in which inclusion is valued. And this all comes back to this idea of trauma and brain development and the effects of trauma on the developing brain. And so I think the relevance of the tools and the course would be, it would be really important for teachers to get into that way of thinking, to realize their role in how they are setting the example for their students and how they can promote a different culture. It is really a hard work, and I will be honest with you guys, in the past 2 years, I think it started 2 years ago, it was really difficult for us, for our colleagues at Presley Ridge, Hungary, to go to the schools and ask the teachers to actually invest in this inclusion work. And so we only have a handful of schools, 14 schools in Hungary, who decided to embark on this journey. And their example actually shows that it is possible, even or despite the most hostile environment, it is possible to create inclusive environments. Does that answer the question?
I think so. So well, you know the situation in these schools. You also got a question in the chat. You want to react on it now, or shall we go on and you read the question and come back?
Yes, I can do it, but just one more idea. I think what really is important in the metrics and in the course as well is the continuous self-reflection and the ability to reflect on yourself, on your values, on your practices, and even on your school's policies that define how a school or a school culture is operated. And basically we have 4 approaches that we build our work on. One is this neurosequential model, and again, how trauma or adverse events affect the developing brain. Also inclusion, that inclusion is not a state that we can achieve. It's a process. The way we define it, it's an ideal situation towards which we strive at all times. And because life will create situations when a different kind of inclusion or a different kind of group has to be involved in our lives. So it's basically how we productively live together. And then we have the so-called re-education of emotionally disturbed children. It's a specific set of principles that help us work with the most troubled and troubling kids. So kids with the most serious behavioral issues. And then the 4th one is systems thinking. So these are the 4 approaches that our system of methodology is built on.
Thank you. We already mentioned that in these past months, well, nearly a year has done quite a lot of damage to inclusion. We know from research from various from various countries that it's basically the vulnerable children who suffered most in the past few months, and that it's not just the trauma, but also with the distance education solutions, it is disadvantaged children who were left behind most. So it's a question to all of you. How do you see Multinclude as a tool that can help schools overcome the problems that, well, increased problems that they have with supporting their students who have more inclusion needs than others? I probably will give the floor in order. So Chris, you have spoken quite a long time ago. Do you have any input on this? So how it is very relevant for solving problems caused by COVID-related school closures and distance education?
Well, I deem this difficult to answer because from my personal impression, the dimensions are so different. The time dimensions of how we're looking at things, because the pandemic came, overnight, more or less. I mean, in Austria, schools were closed like within a couple of days in mid of March. Yeah, so the supply with like digital devices, etc., became obvious. Yeah, on very short notice. Yeah, and it did come when it comes to be say inclusive in that regard. There was little time to react. Yeah, I mean, there was like a policy program by the Austrian Federal Ministry of Education to supply children from more diverse social backgrounds with, you know, electronic devices, notebooks, etc., to sort of level that out. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, this was not planned, right? And when it comes to using tools for enhancing diversity inclusion in general, this is more like a nothing that happens on short notice. Normally you have a certain time perspective which you're aiming to follow.
At the moment we are in a situation when those students with more inclusion needs have suffered more. So my question is how we can utilize more Multinclude for leveling these disadvantages, or at least getting them back to track where they have been, or where they were before the crisis hit.
Well, I mean, as I mentioned in the beginning, I think the most powerful strategy is about being aware what happens, right? And I mean, to make as an educator, to make yourself aware, what do I actually know about my audience, my target population? How is their family situation? How is their living conditions? And to sort of develop a notion of that there are differences indeed. Yeah. I mean, I remember we had within another project we had that discussion previously when it was about, you know, supply with digital devices, and somebody then said, well, access to, you know, online resources may no longer be an issue because everybody is having appropriate tools and using these devices, yeah, which is not necessarily true, yeah, because we know that almost everybody has a smartphone, a mobile phone, yeah, but there is a substantial difference in using smartphones for educational purposes than having a proper PC or laptop with a monitor, etc., for, you know, using all those material that is provided by your teacher, by your educator. A smartphone might not help you a lot, even though it's online. Yeah. So I think it's really crucial to become aware of these differences, which may not be obvious.
We have a question from Chris. I mean, not you, Chris, but Chris Hill. Do you think that inclusion policies should be implemented and include more meaningful national and European budgeting also for educators? I think it's a difficult question because none of the speakers are policymakers, but whoever has an answer or an opinion about that. I don't know, probably Patricia. But I don't want to push.
Yeah, I think it's in a way it's hard to say no. Yes, I think that would be a good idea. I think that the task for any level of the educational system would also cover the concept of inclusion. If we're really serious about that, and if we follow it up, not just keep saying it, I think there might be a change in the long run. So I think that a little bit of pressure from the policymakers would make a difference. If they support that with a little bit of money as well, it wouldn't be bad. But also following it up and evaluate on these levels, not just how well students do in tests, etc., but also how well is the school doing on inclusion. That could maybe be different. If I just could comment on the other question very briefly, because in Sweden we have the situation where all our schools have been open. The first are closing now, but we have managed to keep them open just for the purpose of those children who have difficulties, and the valuable or the great value of education and the place to go to and to meet. That has been a priority. Nevertheless, we have experienced that the most vulnerable children, they do suffer because everything else is closed. There's nowhere to go after school, etc., etc. So it's not easy here either. But I think what happened is that after the first shock, digitalization and the focus on devices and technology, etc., I can see that we have within the system at all levels a growing debate or discussion on pedagogy. How do we learn? How do we support learning in a way that we haven't had for many, many years, because we have been focusing on material and devices and money, etc., etc. So a good thing maybe of this situation, if there are such a thing, for education, I think that we have an opportunity to talk about learning and pedagogy in a way that we haven't been doing for many, many years.
Yeah, I think you're very right. And these tools that we have developed in Multinclude are very good for also supporting this discussion and also the change. If I can leave my role as moderator, I also have a kind of answer for Chris, because I think that it's really important to have financial resources. But in the past 7 years, and also in the budgetary periods before, there was far too much emphasis on innovation, and there are really good project outcomes and tried and tested practices like Multinclude. So I would personally very much advocate for providing budget for exchanging experiences and upscaling practices that work. Because very often, and this is why we're advertising the Multinclude tools so much, what happens is that after the project period, the knowledge and the really innovative and well-working practices are somehow lost. We are at the end of the webinar, so I will just give the floor to anybody who has anything else to add. If you have something stuck in you, any of the speakers.
I would like to comment on your first question, because I think we haven't really mentioned that enough. I think that the school closures, they really showed us how important the parent and school relationship was, how crucial that was for making sure that the students that were stuck at home could follow the instruction. And especially if we're talking about multilingual students, you could easily end up in a situation in which the teachers would send home all the schoolwork and the parents would not be able to support it because they themselves could not speak the school language, okay? And that is not something we should overlook. And so I don't think we have any kind of quick fix solutions for this, but I think that this situation has raised the awareness and has made it obvious that we do need to create valuable school and parent or teacher and parent cooperation around the curriculum. We need to set up some kind of a system that will support the parents and the students through the parents in understanding and accessing the curriculum. And this cooperation can very well take place around the curriculum and the languages. So I think this is a practice that we now need to wake up to, how important it is. And now that we are aware of it, we need to start taking steps.
Thank you very much.
And can I add one quick thought, because I would really emphasize the importance of staying connected to the students, to reach out and maintain that connection that we have had with them in the offline learning situations, because our experience in the pandemic shows that in the schools where the teachers put the focus on just reaching the students, the academic performance didn't fall that much behind than in schools where they didn't maintain the connection. So basically, they didn't lose any students because they put effort on reaching those who seemed to be unreachable at the point, and then they just showed up. And when they came back in the fall, their academics were not so much behind. There is some research done on this as well, showing that after huge natural disasters in school, especially the Hurricane Katrina in the US, there was a study done that those schools who were able to maintain the connection with their students were really successful in catching up at the academic levels within one school year. The other schools where it didn't happen, the students actually turned more to substance abuse. So I would really just stress the importance of maintaining the sense of belonging and reaching out to students. And I think the Multinclude tools are really able to do that, or send this message to the professionals who work with the kids.
Thank you very much. Yes, I also believe that using the Multinclude tools actually can support any school in developing their practices towards the sense of belonging and their inclusion strategies. And it seems to be a very, very topical issue in the current situation. Last month, we tackled another area of inclusion around holidays. So if somebody is interested in that, I can only recommend to also watch the video of that webinar, which can be found in the ESHA YouTube channel. And because we are running out of time, I would like to thank all our speakers for being with us. I think we can continue virtually. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions or if you want to continue this. And to finish the webinar, first of all, since this is the 18th of December, I would like to wish everybody happy holidays and an as much normal 2021 as possible. I don't think we can wish for more at the moment. And also at the beginning of January, please watch out for the invitation for the next ESHA webinar, the next item in the leadership series, which will take place on the 29th of January in a new time, not 10 o'clock, but 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the topic will be gender equality into the future. Thank you for being with us. And I hope to see you all, both the speakers and the participants of the webinar very soon. Thank you for being with us. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
thank
Bye-bye.
you for having us.
You.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Buon Natale. Buon Natale. Merry Christmas. Thank